All right, here we go. Parshas Viyachi. When it comes to Parshas Viyachi, there's so much to talk, and it's almost overwhelming. And we got to figure out where to start and what to do. So the first Rashi is always a good place to start. Pasuk Zogt, Viyachi Yaakov Eretz Mitzrayim Shvas Rishana. Yaakov lived in Eretz Mitzrayim for 17 years. Vihi Yaakov Shnei Chayav Sheva Shana v'Arboim u'Ma'ashana. And Yaakov lived. Vihi Yaakov, the days of Yaakov. Shnei Chayav, the years of his life. Sheva Shonim, 7 years, v'Arboim u'Ma'ashana, and 140 years. So obviously there's what to talk about, what's Shnei Chayav, and why the Pasuk spells it out this way. Fine, we're going to leave that for now. There's Grad al Mordig Mahalach and Avei Nachal, if you get a chance to look at that. It's interesting because the Avei Nachal in Parshas Chayesara also goes through a very similar vart about the days, how each day has its own specific avodah, and it's like interesting. Avei Nachal is more than you say first, because I get to know. Anyways, like Rashi, Lama Parsha Nsitmo. Why is this Parsha closed up? What does it mean closed up? So let's just clarify what this means before we go weiter. There's a halacha in Hilchas Ksiva Sefer Torah that when you write a Sefer Torah between each Parsha, you have to leave a certain amount of space in the letters. Meaning when you type a page, let's say, right, so there's the space bar, and you could make that space bar move as much as you want. Right? When you're writing a Sefer Torah, you have to leave a space of the width of 9 letters in between parashas. Why 9 letters? Up beside, maybe, whatever that is. A separate shmuz. So in between parashas Vayigash and Vayechi, there's no spaces. It runs right into the next. Or if it's at the end of the line, it'll be the beginning of the next line with no 9 spaces. So the question is, why is that? So Rashi explains, once Yaakov Avinu passes away, נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של ישראל. The eyes and the hearts of Yisrael, obviously referring to Yaakov Avinu's children over here, got closed up mitzaras hashibud because of the pain of the shibud of Mitzrayim. She'eschilu l'shabdam, because they started making them work. Davar acher, shebigish legalis esaketz v'nistam imen b'reishis rabba. And another pshat is that Yaakov wanted to be megal them the kates. He wanted to be megal them every, when Mashiach was going to come, and it got closed up from him. The mayones hachachma, so to speak, or mayones hanavua, got closed up from him, and he wasn't able to do that, like it explains in Bereshis Rabbah. Stama kasha, how did Yaakov know when Mashiach was going to come? Right? The Chavetz Chaim, we used to tell people when Mashiach is coming, it was manenu. Reb Chaim used to tell many people, move to Eretz Yisrael, what are you waiting for? Mashiach's here. There's always this like wind that you always hear about it, especially, whenever, Mashiach always comes and these bad things happen, there's always that word, but where do you know it from? So Sheit Medrash, that when Yaakov saw the Mara Hasulam, he saw all the Malach, of Elim Malach Elikim Elim Yerdim Boy. What was that about? So the Elim Yerdim Boy, he saw the Malach of each one of the goals, the Sarashal Edom and Modai and all of them. Then he saw, it says that he saw Sarashal Edom, meaning from this goals, he saw him going up but not coming down. So Hashem told him, go follow after him. Yaakov was too scared, he didn't go. So because of that, that's where this goes. I don't know what that means. There's what to talk about this. But upon him, Yaakov saw in that Mara Hasulam, he saw that's when the cage was going to be. So he was going to tell to his children, but it was Nsitmo Mimenu, and he wasn't able to. Rather state elsewhere in Chazal that although Yaakov wasn't able to be Megalad in the cage, he was Megalad to them tremendous Seidas and tremendous Zachin at that Maimed. It was a tremendous Maimed, because our whole Kabbalah's Omar Shemayim comes from this Maimed. Because when there was the Histalkos HaShchina, when the Shechina left, now remember, Yaakov Avinu, let's just put things in perspective. Yaakov Avinu was a Navi. Yaakov Avinu was Kulei Torah, his Midah of Torah, right? And he always had a Shras HaShchina. Yosef gets lost. He's in Avelus, quote unquote, not really Avelus, because you can't be Misabla Alachai, right? We know this from Chazal, yeah? And Yosef is gone, so now he loses the Shechina. Now, he meets with Yosef again, right? He says Shema Yisrael. It's quite interesting, right? He says Shema Yisrael. So someone asked me, he says, I don't have Shema Yisrael. How could he say Shema Yisrael, right? What do you mean Shema Yisrael? Who's he talking to? He's talking to himself. Right? The Maral has his own Hezbollah in there, which is very different than, the kasha is if if Yaakov is saying Shema, why isn't Yosef? Like, he's been mitzvah, part of a mitzvah because he kibbutz avayim. What's going on? The Maharal says that when tzaddikim and chassidim hear a b'sura tova, when something very, very good happens to them, the first thing they do is they channel it directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the focus of Shema Yisrael is the Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad part of it, the Kabbalah Samach Shemayim of it. That's what Yaakov was doing when he was meeting Yosef. That's l'chera the Alpi Pashtus. So the Gemara says, and the Medrash says, that when they're all standing around Yaakov's bed, it's quite interesting. You look through the Psukim, it keeps on mentioning Chazik Yisrael V'Yeshva Lamita, like the Mita is a big focus over here. The Pashtus is, it's referring to the Mita because Yaakov's Mitas Shlema, all his children are Erlich Yidden. There's no Esavs here, there's no Yishmaels here, it's all Reina Yiddish Adoris. He was scared about Yosef. He was scared by Benjamin, and Dinah was also problematic. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, it's Mitas Shlema. That's how Chazal referred to it. So when he's like, what's going on? It must be that one of you doesn't believe. He's not believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because otherwise why would this Shekhinah leave? It doesn't make sense. Meaning in the mathematics Shabbat, it doesn't add up. So they say, Shema Yisrael. Here, Yisrael, they're talking directly to him. It's Kasha. How do they talk to their father like that? Okay, but Yisrael is a higher madrig than Yaakov, so if they're covered, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the same Hashem that you believe in, we also believe in, and nobody here has any status in Amunah, we're all good. Fine. So that's a little bit about Bikas Legalis as a Ketz and Nesתמו. But I want to focus more on the first part of Rashi. Rashi talks about it was Nesתמו, Einayim, Velibam Shel Yisrael Mitzar Sashibut. So the Rishayin already are bothered by Akasha, because Chazal say that the Shibut started only after all the Shvatim passed away. Levi was the last one of the Shvatim to be Nifter, right? So Rambam talks about this at the end of Parak Aleph from Hilchos Avodah Zarah, that Levi was always the one that was Shemer Torah Mitzvahs no matter what was going on in the world, and meaning Levi is the one that, Hanukkah we spoke about this, that it was interesting. Shimon and Levi, they go and they beat up the whole city of Shem. They wipe out the place, right? It's interesting that when Shimon and Levi come, years later in the Midbar, so you have Pinchas and Zimri, right? Pinchas is from Sheva Levi, and Zimri is from Sheva Shimon. Sheva Shimon is supposed to be the greatest defenders of Kedusha also. Where did they fall out? So Reb Chaim Kanievsky asks this kasha. He brings us a Friyam Zeh Sabracha that says that Medama to a story of a king that the two people came to borrow money from a king, and one of them paid back on time, and the other one, instead of paying back on time, he asked the king if he could take more. So Levi paid back on time, but Shimon has had some falling out over there. So Reb Chaim goes right there and he brings from Sefer Yashar that the Sefer Yashar is an interesting sefer in and of itself, like the background of it, who wrote it and where it comes from. I read a fascinating story when they found it, where they found it. There was in some demolished building or something, and they saw some manuscripts, and they found that. So I don't know exactly. Reb Chaim brings it a lot. And many people bring it. It's a source. The Ramban brings it, whatever. People bring it. It's just interesting what the story is exactly. Anyways, he brings on the Sefer Yashar that Shimon took people back from the Milchama, right? Because Hilchos Yifas Tayr, you're allowed them, right? And that's the story of Shaul ben Haknanis, like Rashi said in last week's parsha. But what's Einayim V'Libam Shel Yisrael? Oh, so what's the original kasha? So there's one basic kasha over here is that l'chera they weren't holding by the shibud yet. The shibud is only starting after Levi passes away. Levi was 137, right? Yosef was nifter at 110. So Levi definitely lived a lot longer than Yosef. Yeah, Yosef was definitely born after Levi, right? That's being Parashat Yetzei. But what's the nakuda here of Einayhem V'Libam Shel Yisrael? The eyes and the heart. What's the eyes? What's the heart? What are we talking about right here? So, and again, Nistam because of the Tzaras Hashibud. What's this about? So there's a lot of different mahalchim we could take, but basically the Gemara says, the pasuk says, "V'leisasuru achri levavchem v'achri einechem." Right? So the ein adam chaytel v'mash ein avrayis. Right? The eyes are the traits, are surei dechet. It's lashon in Gemara. The eyes and the heart has desires, and the eye sees something, and it's going to desire that, right? In Yerushalmi Brocha state that if you put your Einayim and your lave in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you're mine. If not, look what it says over there. I think it says Nish King Good Yeah. Shlomo HaMelech says, Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, and Shlomo HaMelech says that he wants that when people come to be mispal, even goyim, when they come to be mispal in the Mokum HaMikdash, that the tefillah should automatically get answered. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him at that moment of the Beis HaMikdash, "V'hayu einai v'libi sham kol hayamim," my eyes and my heart are going to be there all the days. So l'chayr we could understand it to mean that it doesn't just mean b'shas the Beis HaMikdash is standing, but it means all the days. We still daven. Kineg the Mokum HaMikdash. I'll just tell you over two Gemaras. The Gemara says in Yevamis, Daf Kuf Hem and Bezer B'chiv Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe Havayasi. Reb Chia and Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe were sitting together. Pasachad minay v'Omer Hamaspal Tzarich Sheyitin Einav L'mayla. When a person davens, he has to lift his eyes up. Shenemar, pay attention to this pasuk. Nisol Levavenu El Kapayim. We'll lift up our hearts El Kapayim towards our hands. He said Tzarich Sheyitin Einav L'mayla, right? Okay. Adahachi, as he was saying this, Asr B'Shmal Bar B'Yaisi L'Kabayim. B'Shmal Bar B'Yaisi came and joined them. Amalahus, he says to them, B'Maiski, so what are you handling? Amalei, they say to him, B'Tfilo, we're handling a Shaila and davening. Amalahus says to them, Kach Omar Abba. This is what my father says, what Rabbi Yaisi said. Hamaspalo Tzarech Sheyitin Einav L'Mata. When a person davens, he's got to keep his eyes down. The Libay L'Mala, and his heart, he should keep up. Kedei Sheyiskayim Shtem Akres Halalos. That the two psukim should shtem. What are the two psukim? So, Nisol Levavenu El Kapayim, and then the other one is, so Rashi says, I think Marlon brings up over here. Okay. Rashi says, he has to keep his eyes down towards Eretz Yisrael, whatever that means. Mishum the Shechina Hasam Kaima, because the Shechina is there in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. There is a Mun Rashi. What's Lamata? Right, you should keep your eyes down. And so, to me, right away, I was thinking that, the Adama that you're standing on is Admas Kaidesh, right? Like by Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Beis HaMikdash was zichel like that, right? The Kahanim couldn't wear shoes, right? There's another Gemara in Brachas, Taflam, Dalar Amid Beis, Amr B'chibar Abba, Amr B'yechin, and Ali Spal Adam El Babai Sheyeshem Chalanis. A person should only daven in a room or in a house that has windows. Shenemar V'choven Psichin Lo Ba'alisa Neged Yushalayim. And there were windows that were open towards Yerushalayim, and that's where Daniel was davening. That was the story over there. Pirush Rashi, the windows cause him to be mechaven, because when he looks up to Shemayim, he'll be machniya. So it's interesting. There's a little bit of shmuz over here. Do these two Gemara shtem? Do they not shtem? Right? But the Torah brings in Simon Tzadi, hey, tzarich sheyakov roshei ma'at. You got to bend your head a little bit. Sheyu einav lamata. That physically your eyes should be bent towards the ground. I'm sorry. Their eyes should be positioned towards the ground. Like the pasuk says in Malach, that Hashem says that His eyes and His heart are going to be there all the days, which we said means includes even nowadays. But we daven towards the Beis Hamikdash. That's why we need to put our eyes down towards that. And we have to view it as if we're standing there and we have to be mechaber kilu we're being mispal in the Beis Hamikdash. That's basically the kasha, whatever it is, right? But there's a stark and a kuda here that this concept of נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של ישראל מצארץ השיבוד has to do with the Beis Hamikdash, and not only does it have to do with the Beis Hamikdash stam, it has to do with the fact that even Bizman Hazel, when we don't have a physical Beis Hamikdash in this world, the mahalach that we have is very much focused. Meaning, what's our focus during davening? How do we position ourselves when we're davening? Physically, how do we position our body when we're davening? What are we supposed to be doing? We're working towards this goal of connecting to the Vahayu Einai Velibi Sham Kala Yama. Now, it should be there all the days. This Lamaila Lamata sounds a little bit confusing. But I think there's a shtickle oimik over here that maybe, after we could say a shtickle word. That, the pshat is that Ein Zeh Ki Im Beis Elokim Zeh Shar Shemaim. We mentioned this a few times already, that even when there's a matzav of Ein Zeh, when there's no Beis HaMikdash, it's still, this is Shar Shemaim. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still doesn't start tefillas. It's very interesting, because the Gemara says a few different things about how the tefillas changed from the time of Beis HaMikdash to after, right? There's a lesson in the Medrash that when a person would bring Bikurim, as soon as he comes into the Beis HaMikdash, and he'll ask for something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will automatically, right then, immediately respond to his tefillah. That's all Lashon Tanchuma, right? That when a person brings Bikurim, he'll be able to be mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for whatever he wants, and he'll get an immediate response from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever he down for. Now, if you look at the Medrash over there, the Medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what are we going to do that the Beis HaMikdash is not around anymore? So he said, what do you mean? You have davening. So it's very interconnected, this idea. But I saw something very interesting, and I want to share with the Olam. There was somebody who was nifted before the war, a little bit before the war. It was very interesting, very hilig, big Eli, a big goin. His name was the Oshtrafza goin. And his name was Rabbi Chil Meir Halevi Holzstock. He fasted for 40 years. They say that he had a Ruach HaKodesh, that he knew that the Milchama was happening. He fasted for 40 years that this tzara shouldn't happen. And the Rishiva Tzal Rav Hutner used to say that he would say Gevaldig Gesvaris, even though he was so physically, he was very schwach. So he has a kash over here. What's this נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של Israel? Yeah, so he explains like this. So again, he doesn't bring this, but we mentioned before that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Shlomo HaMelech when he was mispaled by the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, "Vayu Einai v'libi sham kol hayamim." So the Ashtraf explains like this. There's two points in time. There's the past, and then there's the future. And we're holding the present right now, right? So the ayin, he says, it's kind of fascinating because he has a hakdama to his Sefer on Chumash, the Ashtraf, pages and pages long, 50 pages maybe more. It talks about Einayim and not so much the Lev, it's talking about like one verse, two, why we need two eyes. It's fascinating, my Rav. It's very, very long. Pilpul, cheshbainas, crazy mathematical cheshbainas, gematries. It's a very, very vilda Iluyisha Sefer. He has Meirei Chachamim, that's one. There's Torah R is another one. Recently they put out some more Torah from him. But he explains that the ayin, the eyes, is shaykh to the past. When a person tries to remember something, he closes his eyes and he looks back. And by the time you close your eyes, when you blink, whatever you just saw is already in the past. Right? Masha Ein came the Lev is always awake. And Yishain of the Libi is air. The heart, our emotions, that's what pushes us forward onto the next thing. So he says a Mord Gezach. He says at this point in time, Yaakov Avinu was nifter. Right? So Yaakov Avinu Sheinish though. The Shvatim are getting old. They're also the Shiva didn't manage to start yet. Right? But the Kedusha Yaakov Avinu was not here. His lesson is that the Mashiach Shel Yisrael wasn't born yet. And Parshat Shmos, as soon as Parshat Shmos starts, and pretty much towards the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu comes on the scene. The birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. But what happens from when this period of time, these 17 years of Yaakov in Mitzrayim, were the best years of his life, and then Yaakov is nifter. Then you have the tkufa from when Yaakov is nifter till all the Shvatim are nifter, till where the Etzem Shibud starts, until Moshe Rabbeinu comes on the scene. Right? You have to remember, Moshe Rabbeinu came to take Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. He was 80 something. He was 80 years old. Right? So the Shibud return was solid 210 years, give or take. Right, with the Cheshbainas of 400, 430, 210, whatever these numbers are, all that. It's a separate shmos. Right? So he says like this. He says the parasha is sasam. It's closed up. Because whatever happened in the past, it's gone. It's closed up. It is no more. And the asid, the future, not here yet. Right? But it's interesting because when I was thinking about it, I said it's interesting because Lamaisa, Mitzrayim is lashon of Meitzorim. Meitzorim are boundaries, and if Chazal say that an Eved was never able to escape from Mitzrayim. There's fascinating terrors about this. I'll tell you quickly a very short rundown of the Vart. Parai said that he's a god, right? So, what does that mean? So, Shtein Chazal that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world closed up on three sides. The fourth side is if you proved that you're a god, so you could close up the fourth side. I say Shtein Chazal. Parai did not let anybody ever leave Mitzrayim. Why couldn't they just go home? Why couldn't they just go back to Israel? They were stuck. He had all kinds of kishuv, he had all kinds of zachin that didn't allow people to leave. Mitzrayim is spelled starts off with a mem psucha, and it ends with a mem stuma. It's closed on all four sides. You go in, you can't leave. You come in, you can't leave. Right? Masha'inke in a base, right? Bereshit, so Kosh Baruch Hu created the world with a base. It's closed on three sides. The left side is left open. That left side, that's where the koach of all the ra is shaykh to come into the world. Right? So Parah tried to close up the fourth side. He said, no one's leaving. Right? So what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing when he was taking the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, he was completely undermining the whole godless quote unquote of Parah, because Parah's whole shtick was no one ever left here. It's just Gemara's about it. No one ever left. Now Moshe's not giving him an option. He's totally taking down the walls. And you'll notice by the Makkos, there's a lot of talk about Moshe had to leave the city, and the Arba never went out, and never came in. It's all because it's all revolving around this Yisod. L'cher, it's all revolving around this Yisod. So Mitzrayim doesn't know where to go. So Zok the Ashtraf, so he brings the Gemara, fascinating. It's more of like a chizik. But he brings the Gemara, and he says like this. The Gemara Sukkah, Daf Malav says, is Mishnah. V'rishayna he lulav nital b'mikdash, shiva, b'mdina yem echad. V'rishayna, originally, the lulav was taken to the base of Mikdash all 7 days of Sukkot, and the rest of Eretz Yisrael, just 1 day. Mishachar base HaMikdash, when the base of Mikdash was destroyed, his ken Rabbi Yechon HaMezakai, shey lulav nital b'medina shiva, zeichel Mikdash, v'sheyehei yem henef kulei aser. Fine, let's break this down a little bit. Once the base of Mikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yechon HaMezakai made a takana that lulav should be taken in the Medina, everywhere in Eretz Yisrael, for 7 days. Why? Zeichel Mikdash. And Sheyehei Yom Hanef Kulei Aser. So what's Yom Hanef? So a little background. Yom Hanef is the day that Chodosh was mutter. Right? So that they would bring the Korban Omer. Right? Now that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, we do Sfiras Omer. Right? We use it to count the days of Shavuos. Right? But many poskim hold, we're shaying already. But what do we say as soon as you finish counting Sfira, even if we don't say all the Lam Natzeachs and all the tefillas there? We all say, everybody says, Rachman Yachs alone of Vedis Beis HaMikdash from Kaima, because many Rishonim hold that the Iker mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer is Zeichel HaMikdash, is Zeichel HaKorban Omer, right? So that's the Iker part of the mitzvah, to make a Zeichel for the Mikdash, right? V'sheyehei Yom Hanef Kulei Aser. Fine. The Gemara explains over there the reason for this, because he says, Sheyehei Yom Hanef Kulei Aser my time. What's pshat? He made so he says that day, the second day of Pesach, that entire day Chodesh is Aser, and by the next morning, the third day of Pesach, that's when the Chodesh is going to be mutter. Meaning, it used to be in the time of the Beis HaMikdash that as soon as they would bring the carbon, that's when it would. As soon as they would bring the carbon, it would be mutter. Before they would bring the carbon, it would still be Aser, right? But once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the takana was that they should be able to bring from that morning because there's no carbon, right? So why did he make this takana? He made this takana because he'll say that it's Hashem. The Allah, they'll say last year, Eshtakad means last year, didn't we eat when the day started? So Hashtanami Nechel, right? And now that this year is the Beis HaMikdash, they're going to be samach what they did last 2,000 whatever years. Now what did they do? They didn't wait for the korban to be brought, they ate as soon as the day started, right? So they don't realize that last year they didn't have a Beis HaMikdash, right? So when there's no Beis HaMikdash, the halacha is that as soon as it's Heir Mizrach, as soon as the day starts, it's going to be mutter. Hash to the Ika Beis HaMikdash, Omer Mater. But now there's Beis HaMikdash, you have to wait. Okay. So he has a kasha. He says, what's the shayach between the mitzvah of lulav and the mitzvah of being matter the Chodesh, bring the Korban, and bring matter the Chodesh. What's it got to do with anything? So types a shtickle emin on the kasha, ayin shom. So the Ostrafta says that Rabbi Yechon Mazaka, you have to realize who Rabbi Yechon Mazaka was. If you go through the Gemaras in Gittin, he's one of the main people playing. He's one of the main players over there, right? He was trying to do the hishtadlus with Adrianus Kesar and they did crazy things with they did crazy things with him because they weren't letting people out of Yerushalayim. Says Talmidim said his eitzah was that he'll make believe like he died, and they'll put a rotten piece of meat in the box with him, and they'll take him out, and he went out to meet with him. And we know the story. It's the Gemara Gittin. So the Tisha B'Av Gemaras. So Rabbi Yechon Mazaka knew that he says that the Harulaim and Hashemayim, that they showed Rabbi Yechon Mazaka and Hashemayim that this gullus that was happening was going to be that was starting then was going to be very bitter shver. It was going to be zay shver gullus. And Rabbi Yechon Mazaka was trying to think of ideas. What can we do to alleviate the stress and to alleviate the pain of Klal Yisrael that's going into this terrible, horrible gullus? Boiling out of here, no? Very good. So, what could they do? How could we comfort them? So he says there's two mahalchim. It's very interesting. I didn't know that he was Azam, and I thought all his Torah was like all pilpul and all like heavy lumdas. It's very interesting. It's like a very practical, down-to-earth mahalach over here. He says like this. He says there's two ways that a person can cope. Two coping mechanisms, coping skills. When a person's stuck in a matzah and he doesn't want to get drawn into it and sucked into the severity and the darkness of the matzah, there's two things he could do to keep himself afloat. Either he'll think about, the day he's going to get out of it, or he'll think about the beauty of what life used to be like before he got into this mess. So think about, we're in Golus now, right? What happened was, we used to have a Beis HaMikdash. It was so beautiful, right? Levim, Shirim, Ubizimram, Yisrael, and Vayam, and everybody was coming. You have to understand the like you think when you go to a Rebbe's Tish, when you go to a Rosh Hashiva's type of chasana, it's a matzav, yeah? We're not talking, it's all going to be child's play. You have a Rebbe that has even 100,000 Chassidim. We're talking about Gans Klal Yisrael. We're talking about millions of people. We're not, the Shishim Rebbe that we talk about is only men between the ages of 20 and 60. Right? There were many, many children. There were many, depending on which school in the Midbar, there were people over 60 or not. Right? There were probably equal amounts of women. I don't know if there's shit crisis or not. Doesn't sound like it. Right? But they have to realize the Maimed, and it's interesting because the Gemara in Chagiga talks about Ali L'Regel, how they would do, what they would do. The Gemara, the Mishnayos and Bikurim go through a big arichas explaining how they would do, what they would sing, and it sounds like you read about it, like you try to picture yourself there. It'd be like the music playing. Like it wasn't this like horrific music of today. We're talking about. It wasn't even the Levim before they got to the Beis HaMikdash. All the people part of the procession would sing special psukim. It was a maimed nifla. It was a maimed nizgav. It was an unbelievable situation. And now we don't have any of that, right? This whole thing is completely broken. But we do have a little bit, right? We do have a little bit of some shaykhs to this avodah, right? So that's one thing that you could reflect and reminisce about everything that happened in the past and how nice it was, and of course you miss it, right? And you wish you were there, right? Or you wish you had that situation, or it's another mahalach. He says that you could look to the future of how you want, how you're hoping, and how. See, if you don't have hope, then just shut down the whole program, right? The hope is what keeps you going. Hope is what, Mechatei said Klal Yisrael could still be around because of all the tzaras, right? We have hope that we're going to get out of this mess. We have hope we're going to get out of this goals. When I can't tell you, but I believe it's not Pashas Demaisa. Again, because you said the Chofetz Chaim, these people were busy with this business like Hansitzai. It wasn't a clinic for them, right? You see all these ma'aslech about the Chofetz Chaim and others, like, you tell them, if you would even make a joke to them that Mashiach is coming, they'll literally, run to go find them and see. Because they mamish believed that it wasn't just the animam song they sang in school and that was it, right? He says that's the pshat in these two takanas. He says the first takana he says this is the idea. These two takanas over here. The first takana was that one who was zeicher l'mikdash, right? The lulav is Zeichel HaMikdash, and the Yom Henef is what's going to be when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built. Because that's what the Gemara's Cheshbon was. The Gemara was saying of art. The Gemara is saying of art over here that when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt, so then we'll remember. Then we'll talk about what we did last year, right? So he says he said it very nicely. He said that's the pshat. Why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made these two takanas. Achas, Zeichel HaMikdash, Lizkar Sa'ava. One is to be able to remember the past, and the other one, the second one, is Meher Yibana Beis HaMikdash, with the hope going into the future. And he says that's why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai put these two takanas together. So you take it back to the parsha, take it back to what the parsha is saying. At this point in time, so really at this point in the parsha, Mam, just right before Yaakov Avinu was being nifter. Right? But Yaakov Avinu is saying, so to speak, Yaakov Avinu is saying that this is the best kuf of his life, these last 17 years. But think about what happens after Yaakov Avinu is nifter. Where's the kusha? Where's that Titan Emes Liakov that was living by them, the Torah that was keeping them alive this whole time? It's not here anymore. And Moshe Rabbeinu is not here yet to be able to take them out of the mess. The Shvatim are slowly dying out. What do we have? So that's a pshat why at this point is נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של Israel. They're a little bit stuck because they don't have the machine shel Israel yet. So the עיניהם is the past and the Libam is the future. It's interesting. Getting back to the Gemara Brachos, the Gemara says in Daf Yud Beis that V'leisasur achar levavchem is minus, the apikar says v'achar einechem is znus. All right, because we said that the Gemara says that these are the traits of Surah Dechet that will take a person away from it. But the concept of Torah, the concept of Yaakov Avinu being the Amud HaTorah is very, very stark to give a person the kayach to be able to create the kedusha in his own life. I mean, that's what these gemaras are saying. That's the kayach of tefillah that we have to bring to take all the kayachas that we have and to put it into our tefillahs to make it that we don't see the physical Beis HaMikdash today, right? But the pasuk says, "V'yi'einav v'libisham kol hayama," right? And telling that too, like we said before, telling that too back to the old verse of Ein Zeh Ki in Beis Elikim, that even when there's a matter of Ein Zeh, it's still Beis Elikim, the Shar Shemaim. Shar Shemaim obviously is a makam of tefillas. And we said that's why Yaakov Avinu was Sakan Ma'ariv, because he's talking about the goal. He's talking about the person doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal to really know and be able to mamish chap what's holding with the whole, where he's holding be'etzim, right? But so back to the verse, he said that's a pshat why he has an interesting lashon. He says, he gave us these two tools, these two mitzvahs that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was masaken, are two tools to be used in the same oifen to be able to help us get through the goals. And the fact that even b'chorbana, the Beis HaMikdash is still on some kind of level. We still have shayachas to it. We could still chap around with that kedusha, and that's the pshat in נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של Israel. It's quite interesting. I saw ha'ara that most of this is from the Medrash, but Rashi stuck in these words. נסתמו עיניהם וליבם של Israel. It's not in the Medrash. Rashi's saying something over here. So this is actually we could say that's a little bit of what Rashi's saying. All right.